Well, it's 9 a.m., so I'd like to call the July 15th, 2014 City Council meeting to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bush. Soldner.
Here.
Pyros de Carvalho.
Here.
Dave Line.
Here.
Prowett. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This morning's prayer will be given by Daryl Peterson of Grace Christian Church. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly and most gracious Father, we again come before you and thank you, Father, for this day. We thank you, Father, for the cooler weather, and we thank you, Father, for so many things. Father, we thank you for all the young people that's coming into this community and with the Ulster Project, Father, and we just thank you for the city itself and for the management, the leadership. And Father, we just thank you for the plans and the projects that's being laid out. And we thank you for this meeting, that, Father, it be done decently and in order. And we give you the praise, the glory, and the honor. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Well, we have a couple proclamations today, and we're going to start with the Emancipation Day proclamation. So Charles Crumble. You can all come up. You don't have to. Well, our annual Emancipation celebration is coming up, and that's a wonderful event if you've never checked it out. I've gone almost every year since I was a really little girl, and we appreciate that you do that. Whereas on January 1, 1863, President Lincoln proclaimed that all slavery be abolished, and whereas a constant struggle has been going on to accomplish the goals of that proclamation to bring true freedom to an oppressed people, and whereas in 1935, Aaron Johnson, along with James Woodson, and Lester Harrison were members of the Kansas Lincoln Day Club of Hutchinson that sponsored the 10th annual Emancipation Program, and whereas in 1936 in Hutchinson, the Emancipation Proclamation Day Celebration Committee, a nonprofit organization, was organized to arrange proper and fitting activities in honor of emancipation, and now therefore I, Jade Pyros de Carvalho, Vice Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim August 2nd, 2014 as Emancipation Proclamation Day in Hutchinson, and do urge the entire community to help celebrate this important occasion. Would you like to say a few words?
On behalf of the Hutchinson Emancipation Committee, we'd like to invite everyone out to our festivities. We tentatively have a play that will be going on, a rendition of Methuselah's Children, on Thursday the 31st, and on Friday the 1st we will be having our Jazz in the Park at Avenue A. Saturday morning we will have our parade at 10 o'clock, which we go from 12th Street down to Cary Park, and then we will have a picnic in the park as well as a car show. And then Saturday evening at the fairgrounds, we'll have a old school jam, which is a dance for anyone 21 and up. And then on Sunday, we close it out with a gospel fest, which will be at the Hutchinson Fine Arts Building at 3 o'clock. And we encourage everyone to come out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next proclamation is for the Ulster Project. So could I have Ellen and who else is accepting that? Mr. McGuire, I think. Come to the podium, please. You can all come up if you'd like. Yeah. It's nice to have a crowd in the meetings. We don't get that very often unless it's something controversial. So.
Yeah.
Searching for ways to bring peace to Northern Ireland, Church of Ireland Canon Carey Waterstone and his wife Edie initiated a strategy 38 years ago to introduce young Irish Catholic and Protestant teens to tolerance and understanding before they became involved in the country's long-standing conflict. The plan was to bring the teens together in a neutral place where they could develop friendships without reprisal and witness peers of different faiths and political beliefs living in unity. Whereas, Hutchinson was approved to become the 28th host city for the International Peace Project in the year 2000 and is hosting its 14th project this year. And whereas, a dozen Hutchinson teens, half Protestant, half Catholic, with an equal division among gender, will host the 12 teens from Portadown, Northern Ireland during the month of July, and several adults will host Northern Irish adult counselors. And whereas the teens will work alongside each other in multiple public service projects for the community of Hutchinson, and whereas the Ulster Project will work to strengthen the ecumenical ties of cooperation among the churches of the host community, and whereas members of the Hutchinson community have united in the effort to help usher peace into Northern Ireland by providing cash and product donations, meals, volunteer transportation and labor, planning or recognition, and opening their homes to these guests, both teens and counselors. Now, therefore, I, Jade Pyros de Carvalho, Vice Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of July as Ulster Project of Hutchinson Month and encourage all citizens of Hutchinson to recognize the effort. Would you like to say a few words?
Initially and first off, I'd like to thank the City of Hutchinson for this recognition of the Ulster Project and the work that we do. We're very privileged to be able to bring 14 young people from Northern Ireland, 7 Protestant, 7 Catholic, over to Hutchinson here to work on leadership skills and sectarianism and peace resolution and peace management and things like that that are very prevalent for our young people. And we've had nearly 500 young people from Portadown through this project. And we'd like to thank, once again, the City of Hutchinson for allowing us to do this and to continue this, and we hope and we pray that it continues even further. Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 5, oral communications from the audience.
This is the time of the meeting where we allow for public comments from the audience, so please step up to the podium, state your name and address, and we ask that you please limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes and to items that are not on the agenda.
Good morning. My name's Charles Buckaloo. For y'all that don't know me, live on West 30th. I was here today just to remind everybody about the pet memorial wall that'll be dedicated in the park this weekend. Hutchinson Reno County Chamber of Commerce ribbon cutting Friday at 11 that everybody's invited to. And then Saturday at 2, there will also be what I would consider the grand opening, and might as well come out and have some free food and meet a bunch of nice people and enjoy the day. Well, it looks like we're going to have some nice weather. That would be a change for our functions. There's something about that area out there. It seems like you can have 70 degrees here in town and it'll be 20 below or 150 out there. So. But it is a wall that was built in memory of Susanna Mcvay, which some of you knew, who had a great love for animals and a great passion for them. And she belonged to an organization I belong to, Cause for Paws. And anyway, we've got it up now. It's looking wonderful. We'd enjoy seeing you all out there, and hopefully we'll see you. So unless anybody has any questions, I'll get off the podium, and this is a first. You take note of this, John. 1 minute, 2 minutes, I'm out. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you for all your work with Cause for Paws.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Vice Mayor Pyros de Carvalho, council members, thank you very much for allowing me the privilege of addressing you here today. My name is Joe Fangman. I live at 211 Buckskin. The purpose of my input today is the hope that you will change the format of this part of the regular agenda, the public participation part, of which I am now taking advantage of. I would like the council to adopt the rule that members of the public are prohibited from making critical comments of named, non-elected city staff during this section of your agenda. Let me explain. First, this is not a new concept for participation in open meetings. The Hutchinson School Board, of which I was a member, has prohibited critical comments of specific named school district employees for years and has been very effective in adhering to this policy. Second, when a member of the public is prohibited from being critical of a specific named city employee, that member must then verbalize his complaints in a manner that addresses just exactly what the complaint is. Let me explain. When you take away, I've talked with City Street Superintendent John Johnson, and I hope there's not an employee named John Johnson. That's a fictional name. I've talked with City Street Superintendent John Johnson, and he should be fired because he doesn't listen to me about the big pothole on my street. And that can be turned to, I've been unable to get the street department to fix the pothole in my street. I'm worried about this because there are many children who ride bikes in the area or who may be injured by this. Also, when the big trash trucks come down the street, I'm afraid the street will be made worse. The possibility exists that if you prohibit critical comments of a specific named city employee, the city council actually might get better public information from what exactly that resident's concern is. Third, and my last point, this meeting of the city council is required by Kansas law to be a meeting open to the public. It is not required by Kansas law to be a public meeting. You've put an item on the agenda for public input, of which again I thank you for that privilege. But it is just that, a privilege. I would assume that you want to hear directly from citizens if they have comments or concerns about how the city is being governed, which is admirable. However, what I think you are after is how are the results of city government impacting the residents. You have an entire human resources department within the city that measures, evaluates, organizes, and complies with all the elements of each individual city staff's contribution toward those results. I see no reason whatsoever why you would need public individual assessment of city staff performance at your open city meetings. I appreciate each of your contributions of time and talent in working to make Hutchinson a great place to live. I know many of you personally, and I know that you take responsibilities of being a council member very seriously. I'm asking that you take the responsibility of protecting your hardworking city staff from public personal attacks, or being demeaned, ridiculed, or in any way personally criticized in this forum from this pulpit. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
I actually might comment on that a minute. I don't know if we want to discuss this, but I think we've all thought about this an awful lot in the last week, and we all probably believe pretty strongly in the right of citizens to address the council, especially areas of concern where we could improve. But I think this should also be a space of respectful dialogue that is solution-based, and the podium should not be a platform for slander. So I think you bring up a really good point, and in order to keep comments more based on how we can improve the community, solution-based, I think that's an excellent recommendation. I don't know how everybody else feels or where we would move forward in implementing a change in the public comment portion of the meeting, but I think you bring up a good point.
Joe, I couldn't agree with you more. I appreciate your coming forward. I'm a strong proponent of exactly what you're proposing. I think it would be a positive step to make sure going forward that we don't have the incident that occurred here 2 weeks ago. It was not good for this community to have had that type of a direct pointing. Pardon me?
Just a diatribe.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know from a procedural standpoint whether this is a topic for today or an executive session level, whether this just becomes a policy.
Yeah, I think we could, set forth some language that sets forth what,
Parameters.
what's expected.
Some parameters, absolutely.
I mean, typically it's been the you know, it's the mayor's responsibility to run the meeting and in a sense, in some cases, actually control the meeting. And I think we all realize that might have got a little out of hand, a lot out of hand a couple weeks ago. So we could put that together and then incorporate that into the agenda. You know, under our oral communications, it just says right now, please limit your comments to 5 minutes to anything that's not on the agenda, and we could add some additional language that would set that forth. And you know, historically, we haven't had a lot of that, and fortunately, you know, Hutchinson's a good community, and people seem to be pretty civil when they come to our meetings, but occasionally can get out of hand. So I appreciate Mr. Fangman's comments as well.
Yeah, and I'd also like to take the opportunity to apologize for not stopping him from slandering you, your neighbors, and members of the city staff. But thank you for coming here today.
Yeah. Might just want to look at 308's policy.
Yeah, we
And see.
definitely will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the council?
My name is Gene Mcvay. I live at 13 Swearens. I'm sorry Mr. Fangman left. He about stole all my thunder. On the front page of the Hutchinson News Sunday, we're back to stopping people from improving their homes in the historical district. And I thought we had solved that a couple of years back with Mr. Minner. This council turned it around, and he got to proceed on. And I'm wondering why this can't be resolved so it doesn't come up again. Yeah.
Well, Mr. McVeigh, I think the Landmarks Commission exists solely to preserve historical standards. However, I think the council has recognized that we're dealing with two competing priorities
I
here,
understand.
the deterioration of the housing stock versus
Right.
preservation. And typically, taking our city housing stock up to standards has come out as a higher priority. Not that we don't respect what the Landmarks Commission does, but I think that commission is important. Don't
Yeah,
you,
it-
John? Or
Well, and the response to that is that it wasn't resolved 2 years ago, a year ago. The council resolved that individual case, but it would not deal with the overall historic district. And if you think back on that whole process, that neighborhood came to the city, petitioned, and created this historic district for a lot of reasons, obviously, to keep
Yes.
that feel
I under-
and obtain funds and what have you. And so there are people that have, you know, spent a lot of money to maintain the historic nature of their home, and so they want to be protected so the guy next to them doesn't do something that deters from that. And so it's kind of a tough situation. We've even talked about, well, if it's that big of an issue, let's dissolve the whole historic district. Well, to me, that's something that the neighborhood needs to be a part of, and I'm not so sure it's that easy to
Undo.
eliminate the district once it's being created. So there is a place. The good thing about what we have, the Landmarks Commission more than likely is always going to recommend that they not be able to do what this gentleman wants to do. They bring this to the council. The council, I think, at least in my time here, has always fell on the side of the homeowner, and I suspect that'll happen again. It's just a process this individual has to go through. So, and city staff is enforcing the regulations as they're to be. The Landmarks Commission is doing their job, and the way the process is set up, there is an appeal, and that's exactly what will happen with this particular case in a couple weeks. So,
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
To respond, the problem hasn't, I mean, that issue is going to be there. It'll be there next year, next month, when somebody wants to do the same thing. And eventually, 20 years from now, the historic nature of that district will be gone, and therefore maybe the designation could be lifted because,
Yeah.
Once you show that this neighborhood no longer has that historic feel to it, then maybe it's
Right.
time to eliminate it. But it's a process.
Yeah, when a certain percentage of the properties are no longer contributing, then
Then
it will.
yeah.
It will be dissolved. This is just going to have to be something that's looked at one by one, and it may
Yeah.
sound oppressive, but
it will work itself out over the
Okay.
long haul.
I appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate your comments.
One more thing. Right across this page from that, and I don't want to bust this young man's bubble, but he's building a roller coaster in his backyard. And maybe it's not the city's responsibility, but I think they should be concerned with that. Because they're gone for the weekend and somebody would get in there and ride it and get hurt. I'm sorry.
I saw that article and was wondering what our code was.
You
on
didn't
that.
have one as a kid in your
I did
backyard?
not. Had a trampoline and that was
And a
dangerous
slide.
enough.
Yeah. I don't know a lot of detail on that. I mean, it's his backyard, it's his private property. It's not going to be available for public consumption, I guess, or use. But I don't know. I don't really have much of an answer for you on that. But I don't know that we've got any zoning regulations that prohibit the way you build a recreational facility in your backyard. But
People have devices in their backyard for
Yeah.
their kids to play on,
Yeah.
swings and
Right.
slides, and, and that's, I understand that. And a broken arm falling out of a swing is gonna happen. But I'm concerned with, a few years ago, somebody had a privately owned zip line down around Cheney or Pretty Prairie,
yeah.
and a lady was killed. I mean, that's
Yeah.
my concern.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Would anyone else like to address the council? Okay. Next item, please.
Item 6A, public hearing on Prairie Hills Waterline Assessment.
Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Good morning, Council. Frank Edwards, Director of Finance for the city. Last council session, we set today as a public hearing for the assessments for Prairie Hills Water Improvement Districts. The assessment amount total $141,247, and they'll be assessed equally per lot. Exhibit A shows you the assessment ordinance to be considered and sets forth the assessments for each lot. The property owners have until August 18th to prepay all or part of these assessments, or they can let it be assessed for 20 years with the county clerk. The amount of the assessments per lot is $3,363.03, or if you wanted to look at it on a monthly basis, it's $14.01. The city's share of this project expense was $154,699 and would be paid from the water fund, reserve fund, capital reserve funds. The assessment ordinance must be approved following the public hearing on the proposed assessments, and we recommend the approval of the ordinance.
Are there any questions? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to comment on this item? Okay, if not, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I so move.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve or not approve the ordinance levying and assessing special assessments?
I'll do the short version motion to approve the Prairie Hills subdivision waterline assessment as recommended by staff and authorize the vice mayor to sign.
And I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho,
Yes.
Dave Line.
Yes.
Items 7A through E, consent agenda.
I will move to approve the consent agenda as presented and authorize the mayor to sign,
Second?
or vice mayor.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? please call the roll.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Next item, please.
Item 8A, consider resolution amending Resolution 2014 R16 for Quail Ridge Sanitary Sewer Benefit District.
We have an amended resolution for Quail Ridge Improvement Sanitary Sewer System. Because the original cost estimate of $219,400 was exceeded, the lowest bid came in at $272,200, which exceeds the amended resolution, or exceeds the original amount by more than 10%. That requires an amended resolution. 100% of these cost improvements will be assessed to the benefit district equally per parcel, and the city's responsibility is 0% of the cost. The revised resolution has been signed by 100% of the property owners, and the developer has met all the requirements of the city of Hutchinson, and we recommend adopting this amended resolution as submitted.
Is there any discussion or questions? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion for the resolution to either approve or not approve.
Nancy, you? or-
I thought it was your turn.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right, I move to approve the resolution amending resolution number 2014 R16 of the Quail Ridge Sanitary Sewer Benefit District and authorize the vice mayor to sign.
And I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Item 8B, consider resolution amending Resolution 2014 R17 for Kissawah Street and Drainage Benefit District.
Okay, we have a similar situation in Kissawah North Edition and Kissawah North Second Edition Street, where the street and drainage improvement projects estimates were lower than the actual bid came in at. The original estimate was $588,900. However, the lowest bid was $640,000. As this exceeds the estimate, as the actual bid exceeds the estimate, we're asking for an amended resolution. 95.05% of the cost of these improvements will be assessed to the benefit district, with the city picking up just short of 2%. The revised petition has been signed by 100% of the property owners, and the developer has met all the requirements of the city of Hutchinson. So we also recommend adoption of this amended resolution.
Frank, because 100% of the property owners signed it, it's not a huge deal, but I'm just curious why the engineering estimates are low. We hardly ever see that. Is it just increase in costs that we couldn't anticipate?
That one I may have to defer to somebody from engineering, but the lowest bid was by far higher than the original estimate.
Morning, Michael Kramer with engineering. The bids, I believe on the Kissawah North, they used some older bid tabs to do their estimate, and those estimates were done by the consultant for the developer. And so, I think just due to the bid nature here, it came in a little bit different, and their consultants out of another locale, and so.
Maybe a larger one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's just
That
a little
makes
bit of
sense.
variance. One thing I will say, and we'll go over the bids later, the 3 bids on the project, we had 3 bidders, and they were all very close to each other.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion or questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Okay, I will move to approve the resolution amending Resolution 2014 R17 of the City of Hutchinson, Kissawah North Edition and Kissawah North Second Edition Street and Drainage Benefit District, and authorize the vice mayor to sign.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Next item, please.
Item 9A, consider conditional use permit for a wireless communication tower.
Good morning. I'm Casey Jones, Senior Planner, and on May the 16th, 2014, the Planning Department received an application from NextTech Wireless for a conditional use permit. NextTech is a company based in Hays, Kansas, and they're looking to establish about 7 to 9 new antennas and towers in the Hutchinson area. They're looking at this particular site at 1200 West 15th Avenue, which is owned by the Knights of Columbus. And I think on the overhead we have a map of that property. It is zoned public and institutional, and in order to establish a tower of the height they're proposing, 150 feet high, a conditional use permit is required. The tower is proposed to be located near the northwest corner of the property. You can see from the aerial picture it's near a drainage canal, as well as a residential property to the north. There's a residential neighborhood off to the east, and off to the south is a city-owned park called Harsha Park. It's one of the few areas in the west side of Hutchinson that's not zoned residential, and that's what the applicant was really looking for. Our zoning regulations limit the height of towers in residential zones to only 50 feet. And for the neighborhood that the applicant is trying to serve and improve coverage in, that 50 feet of height isn't adequate to even clear the trees. And the applicant did look at co-locating on several other buildings in the area. There's grain elevators, there are a couple of other towers on the west side of Hutchinson. But for one reason or another, co-location was not an option. Either the owner of the property was not willing to grant authority to co-locate, the existing structure was not tall enough, or the property wasn't zoned correctly for that use. So we did look at a pretty detailed set of construction plans, which I think were in your packet. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this case on July 1st, and the Planning Commission recommended approval by a unanimous vote. Staff had also recommended approval of the request, and there were a number of conditions recommended by the Planning Commission. I'd like to read through those just briefly. There's only 4 of them. It says this conditional use permit shall only be used for a ground-mounted, self-supporting, wireless communication monopole tower, not to exceed 150 feet in height, including a ground-mounted equipment shelter and appurtenant equipment, wiring, and screening on the property at 1200 West 15th Avenue. The property shall be developed in accordance with the approved site plan, construction plans, architectural drawings, screening plan, including the installation of a 10 feet high solid security fence around the base of the tower. Significant changes to the plans will require approval by conditional use permit. No structures or improvements shall be located over an active sewer main or in an established utility easement except by approval of the city engineer. And finally, a building permit shall be obtained from the inspection department prior to construction. And as we were reviewing the case, actually, after the public hearing had already occurred, staff realized that there is, in fact, a 12-foot wide sewer easement that runs pretty much right through the site that's proposed to be developed. So the applicant is proposing to have that easement vacated. There's not really a need for that sewer line anymore. It used to serve a house that no longer exists. That house has been demolished. And to vacate that line and abandon that line. So that's something that the city staff will work with the applicant on accomplishing. That may be a request that comes to the council here in the near future, the vacation petition. But I think we're okay with the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission, that those don't need to be modified based on that information. There were a number of citizens who came and attended the public hearing. We notified all those property owners within 200 feet there are only four property owners within the 200-foot radius, but a much larger number actually signed a petition and turned in comments to the planning staff and attended the hearings. There's a lot of discussion about the potential impacts of this tower. We got into potential impacts of things like lighting, health impacts, noise, and I think all of those were discussed and addressed at the public hearing. Our applicant is Richard Gato, and he's here in the audience today. I'm sure he'd be willing to answer any specific questions you might have about this particular tower. But that's all I have for you at the moment. If be open to any questions you might have.
I'm sure we have a few residents here who might want to comment on this, but does the council have any questions first?
No, we had more than adequate documentation.
Yeah, I appreciate having all of that in the packet to review.
Sure.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the council on this issue? Please state your name and address.
My name's Alan Webster, and I live at 1609 Graber Road, right next door to the Knights of Columbus. Anyway, I was gone at your last meeting. We were in Alaska celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary, so I wasn't here to attend.
Congratulations.
And there's a lot of facts that weren't brought up in this. Some of the things I would like to know, the city, do you know that the city has refused 2 sites themselves, that they didn't want this cell tower? And one of the things I've read, my wife's got a lot of studies that's done on the cancer, problems with cancer caused by this. Also, what kind of an economic impact is this tower bringing? None that I can see. I've been on the board of Prairie Star Health Center, Crosspoint. We built $15 million worth of buildings in the last 2 years. And that's all done in Hutchinson. But I see that all the money here is going to go back to Hayes. None of it will stay in Hutchinson. They won't have any employees. If they do, why, they're going to rent a building. That's what I was told. So as far as economic impact, I see none. So why are we not being represented, the people of Hutchinson, instead of a company from out of town where all the money goes out of town? I can understand why they want to put one in. That's their business. But cell towers they do not belong in residential areas. Everything I've read, you don't put cell towers in residential areas. And I'm sure they're going to have a reason. We've got studies from all over the world, and anywhere up to 100 times the chance of getting cancer rises clear up to 100 times better with a cell tower in the area. So with that, I'm going to let my wife read a few things she's got.
Hi, I'm Judy Webster, and we looked up a few article things. It says cell phone tower studies which examined the relationship between radiation exposure and cancer rates were conducted in the city of San Francisco, in addition to cities in Austria, Germany, and Israel dating back as far back as the 1970s. And all the studies shared similar findings. Living within a certain proximity of a cell phone tower increased the risk of cancer anywhere from 2 to 121 times. Over 100 scientists and physicians at Boston and Harvard University Schools of Public Health have called cell phone towers a radiation hazard. A study performed by doctors from the German city Nila monitored 1,000 residents who lived in an area around 2 cell phone towers for 10 years. During the last 5 years of the study, they found that those living within 400 meters of either tower had a newly diagnosed cancer rate 3 times higher than those who lived farther away. Austria study found that children develop leukemia at 3 times the rate. And if you live within a quarter mile of a cell phone tower antenna, you may be at risk for serious harm to your health, according to the German study. Cancer rates more than tripled among people living within 400 meters of that tower. And cell phone towers are here to stay, but they are an implementation that needs effective regulation in items of location. Cell phone towers should be located away from residential areas and far away from schools and daycares. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Lois Porter, and I live directly east of the Knights of Columbus. My husband Richard and I have lived at our home and raised our children there since 1970. When we moved there, it was a grown-up junky shack with falling down sheds and a row of china toilets lined up against the west wall of the house. We rebuilt the house, paying cash as we earned it, and doing the work ourselves. When the house at 1129 became a nuisance rental with drunks, goats, and starving dogs, we bought it and tore down the house. Our neighbors were grateful to a man. We have always been good neighbors and enjoyed our quiet neighborhood. Several years ago, we were asked to accept that the land with the pond at the end of the neighborhood was going to be purchased by the Knights of Columbus. We had reservations, but were assured that they would be good neighbors. Bankers Investment had owned the property before. We never heard anything over there but car doors and the sound of mowers. The Knights have been good neighbors much of the time, but several times a year they rent it out to a large group. Many times these large parties of people expect to park where they want, drive faster than is safe for a neighborhood street on their way to 17th Street, and have DJ music pounding out the doors of the building that is so loud we can hear it through the walls of our homes. There have been periodic drunken brawls which have spilled out into the parking lot and down the street, screaming, fighting, cussing, and dangerous drunk driving out of our neighborhood. Mr. Ben Fisher, representing the Knights, takes issue with this characterization of what we have had to put up with. He tells us that he is on site and there is nothing like that going on. Ask any neighbor nearby and you will be told much of what I am telling you. We find it offensive to have to call the police because of cars parked up in the middle of our lawns, dangerous lunatics in cars terrorizing our streets, and music so loud that it surely is criminal. Now the Knights want us to calm down and accept this cell tower. They are a private individual, and this cell company is a business with its own agenda. All of this means nothing to us. We have no good citizen reason to adjust to the greater good and cannot just take the word of the Knights and the planning board that this isn't going to be a problem. We live there. No one can assure us that these cell waves will not harm us, that this tower will not fall outside the 25-foot perimeter they specify, nor that after we have had this tower shoved down our throats that it will not be replaced by a taller tower with strobes and or a flashing red light that might be expected to keep time with the DJ music we already have to put up with. We who object to this tower feel, as citizens of Hutchinson, that our desire to protect ourselves from further menace is a valid attitude, and justly feel that our rights and needs are not being listened to. We ask that you put yourselves in our situation and give us the consideration we deserve and have earned. Thank you.
Thank you. I might just ask if the conditions put on the tower preclude the addition of lights, because I was under the impression that they did.
The city zoning ordinance actually prohibits any lighting on any cell tower unless it's required by the FAA. And in this case, it's not required by the FAA, so it is prohibited by our ordinance.
So we would never have strobes on that.
Correct.
Okay, so can you comment on where the other cell towers are located in Hutchinson?
Well, there are a number of them. There are a couple of towers located at the far west end of 17th Avenue, where 17th Avenue dead ends, over by the Cow Creek diversion.
By the old radio station?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are 2 towers on that property.
Isn't there a tower in what used to be the old Moose Lodge swimming pool area on South, what would that be, Lorraine?
Yeah.
Aren't there a couple there? Yeah.
Over on the east side of town, yes. There are also a couple of towers to the east of the Hutchinson Mall, to the east of the railroad tracks in an industrial area. And there's a very tall tower, the south side of downtown at 320 South Adams, actually, is the tallest tower in Hutchinson.
Are any of those within a quarter mile of residential area like this one would be? Or
Yes,
the
yes,
one
a few
out.
of them are.
I think we had one, the North Main at the high rise up there. That was a recent one,
Mhm.
up there by the Quick Shop on North Main, that high rise.
Antennas on top of the
Probably the most
building.
recent,
Mhm.
yeah.
Thank you. I'm sure Mr. Is it Gato could comment on some of these
Thank you.
concerns.
Very good. My name is Richard Gato. I'm with NextTech Wireless from Hayes, and I would like to give a little bit of the address a little bit of the questions, and a little bit of history of what we're planning to do with in Hutchinson. Casey mentioned that we're going to do 6 towers, where that is inside Hutchinson, where actually this build is 17 towers, and the economic impact is for this build of what we're actually spending is in excess of $4 million. The other issue that was brought up was about being involved in the community. We will have a retail space that is currently vacant. We are in the process of leasing that. We're finalizing the lease. I expect to have that done hopefully next week. We do expect to employ up to 5 people in the initial hiring, and we greatly hope that that increases with time. Our hope is that we eventually have a second location in Hutchinson or in South Hutchinson. We just haven't identified once that happens. I think the real question here is, let's kind of address it, is the question about cancer, and that's a valid question. I will tell you that, I can go out on the internet and get 50 websites, and 25 of them will say yes, and 25 of them will say no. But the fact is that the FCC has approved the location of cell towers in residential neighborhoods, and we currently have, and the FCC has approved, the location of cell towers in and on hospitals and doctor's offices and medical centers. We currently at NextTech Wireless have 3 hospitals that have cell towers on the roofs, and we actually talked to the hospital in Hayes, and they had no objection to it, but we couldn't come to a deal on that, and that was a separate tower issue, but they had absolutely no reservations or concerns about doing it. The question about strobes and lights and everything has been addressed. The question about a taller tower, I think that's restricted by the conditional use permit. It cannot exceed 150 feet. We, frankly, it would cost a fortune to tear out the tower and then put up a new one. So it wouldn't be realistic. You do ask about towers in residential neighborhoods, and I would like to mention one that's been in existence for a really long time in Hutchinson, and that's at the Plaza Towers. That's a 13-story building, and they've had Sprint on top of their roof for, I know, at least 5 years. So, with no issues. In closing, we understand the concern, and I appreciate it, but the FCC has stated that this is not an issue. We do have to abide by what's called the maximum permissible exposure, and at 6-foot level, we are at less than 2% of the allowed exposure rate for our signal. without getting very technical here, we operate at a higher frequency, which has less radiation, less frequency interference and things like that than, say, your Sprints or your AT&Ts and so on. So I understand all the questions and concerns, but I think, they've all been addressed, and we look forward to being a partner with the city of Hutchinson and having a bright future here. So I'll stand for any questions from the commission, if they have any.
Are there others in the audience who would like to come to the podium to address the council on this topic? Please state your name and address. Thank you, Mr. Guido.
I'm Jimmy Ray Bishop, and I live at 1608 Graber Road. And I'm pretty concerned about it because, I went around and spent about an hour and a half one day just with the people in the community. And I didn't find anybody that wanted it. Even people that were members of the Knights of Columbus, they didn't want it. But some of them, one man worked at a school over in Wichita, so he didn't want to cause any problems with his job. And the neighbor says, I don't want that eyesore in our city. This is not like an industrial zone. It's not I bought my house years ago there because I like it quiet and stuff. And it isn't quiet around there, parties and stuff. We've already talked about that before. And that's not the issue. The issue is we as American people, we need to take a stand on it, And if it goes through, if it doesn't, we need to take a stand. We have a nation that people don't take a stand anymore. And it starts from the Capitol on down. And as a Christian, I realize that a lot of Christians don't take a stand. And I'm going to take a stand because I'm proud of this nation, but it's crumbling at every aspect. Committees, organizations, they have money and clout. So the people that are just normal people, it's hard for us to fight back. But we can pray and we can stand up and say, we want our rights. And I lived in that area for years, and the neighbors are wonderful. I've seen families come and go, pass away. And we don't want it. I went around for about an hour and a half, like I say. Everybody I talked to, this is the middle of the day. People were at work. There were more people that wanted to be here today, but the meeting's at 9 o'clock in the morning. And they have to work, And in fact, I just got off the job I was doing. And I just rushed in late. But the main thing is, we live in this area. What benefit does it to us? I have a cell phone. We have cell phone companies all over this town. I have a cell phone. But, you have an organization that's supposed to be Christianity. And if you get on the internet, there's porn, there's all kinds of stuff. And I feel like when they put that up there, they're promoting that. For me as a Christian, I couldn't promote that.
Mr. Bishop, I would ask that you withhold comments
Okay.
about the Knights of Columbus. They do a lot of good for this community, and I really appreciated your comment about taking a stand.
Yes.
I'm glad that you came to the meeting. I'm glad that Mrs. Porter came to the meeting and the Websters, and we really appreciate that public input. I hope you don't think it's falling on deaf ears when we don't always go with what the public comment asks, but it is very helpful to hear from the residents, so I appreciate that.
Okay, so does it benefit our community? How benefit does it benefit? Taxes? I pay taxes for years. Does it benefit does it make anything? Does the money stay here, or does it just go to one organization? So that's my comments, and I just thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, take care. Thank you.
Mr. Fisher, would you like to address the council?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Benjamin Fisher. I'm here on behalf of the Knights of Columbus. I am also a resident of that neighborhood. I live at 103 Brookview Court, which you can just barely see the house in the top left corner of the map that is on there. I will tell the council that nobody has come by my house to talk to me about this. The petition that I saw only included one person in the cul-de-sac neighborhood that I live in. The other neighbors, and very close to at least 3 or 4 of them, where I talk to them all the time, they've never been approached about the cellular tower other than by me, and they didn't take any issue. What I told the building commission is this is something that's in a direct line of sight from my kitchen window. So, and I don't have an issue with it. As to the economic impact, I set out the money that we're receiving as a part of rent is going directly into our charitable contribution fund. And we give all of that money locally. Everything from Special Olympics here that they have out at Bueller, we fund that. Just a list of everything that we do. All that money stays here locally. And this money's going to stay here locally too, just to help out families in needs. And that's the main reason we decided to do it, is to increase our charitable contributions in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just had one more question. There is no noise emanating from the tower, is there?
Not appreciable.
No, there is no noise. The only noise that would emanate is if we had lost electricity, we would have an outdoor generator, a small outdoor generator that's enclosed and everything, and it would run. We would also run that for about 3 minutes once a month during the day.
Okay.
To make sure it's up and running. But
Thank you.
that would be it.
Thank you. We've heard a lot about the noise complaints, but I think that's an issue more with the Knights of Columbus, and I would encourage the neighbors to maybe address that group. They're probably very willing to listen to those concerns. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council? Josie?
My name is Josie Thompson, and I am here as a representative of the Planning Commission. I'm the chairperson for the Planning Commission for the city. And I just wanted to give a synopsis of why we passed it unanimously when it came through our doors, across our agenda. We felt that that NextTech Wireless is actually being a very good neighbor. They've done their best to enclose everything they can within their fence. Even if the tower should fail, it'll fall within that. They've got low noise, low radiation. They've picked a spot on the land, and whether that was Knights of Columbus or NextTech, they've agreed on a spot in the land that has the least amount of impact to any of the neighbors. If the tower were not to break like it's supposed to, and even the full 150 feet of it, very little of it would actually fall outside of the Knights of Columbus land, if any. It's the city's property for the drainage ditch and Mr. Webster's land. I mean, if anything, it would damage Knights of Columbus property. And so they've done their best to contain it. They are doing their best to service their customers while being also a good neighbor to these people in this area. You know, I live in an area that has towers nearby, over by the fairgrounds. I can't speak to being a neighbor in this area, but I think they've done their best to conceal it, low noise, low radiation, that we didn't see any detrimental effects from it. And studies and that kind of thing, they've done their homework. So, and we felt that they presented a good plan to the city, and they've done their best to contain everything within their yard.
Thank you, Josie. Is there anyone else? Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
My name is Janice Ringgold. I'm at 225 East 6th. My mother lives at 1129 West 17th. At the top of that, about the top right, not quite right, is where the property is. She's one of 4 owners in that area that is here today to speak against the tower. This is a family home. My grandfather built that home 60 years ago when this was a wheat field. And it was a quiet place to live. And he wanted this to be a home for his wife, his daughter, and it has become a 5-generation home. As was noted before, the Knights of Columbus came in and have created a business within a residential community with promises. And most of those promises have been kept, but some things, as you said, that need to be addressed with them directly have been. And now we're being asked to have one more promise believed. And it's another part of a business in our community. It is what it is. It's a business. We have no doubts that the monies that they spend and put out into the community are well thought out. at this point, none of the planning commission or none of the council that I'm aware of lives in that area. So they are not directly impacted. We are. And it's a low-density area. We like it that way. Low impact visibility from the ground is because there's going to be a 10-foot tall fence. It's a 150-foot tower. As long as your neck doesn't let you look up, you won't see it. Most people can. It will impact our community. It is a business within our residential area. A few things bother me is that I'm a new resident to the city. I was raised on the East Coast. We just moved here 4 months ago, and we plan to make this our home. But at the Planning Commission, it was noted that one alternative site was requested to be considered by within the city, Rice Park. They were contacted. The city was contacted. He noted 15 times. Let's just say it was 7. Even half that, 3. Why was he not given an answer, yes, yay or nay? He wasn't. He was ignored, bypassed. I don't know what it is, but it was an alternative site that they had determined could be a part of their array. Planning Commission never said, you know what? We need to look at this site. This was part of what they looked at. It's a site that would not impact this residential community. There are other types of towers in Rice Park, so it would be a part of an array that aren't connected. Why wasn't that addressed? Why wasn't that considered? I would think that they would have stopped and said, we need to find out why that wasn't addressed. There may be a good reason, but that was never brought up. And it bothers me that everybody keeps overlooking that. There is an alternative site that nobody will address.
You know, Mrs. Ringgold, that's actually a really good point and something I noticed in the packet. And I think it was the Websters who brought up that 2 other sites were refused by the city. Can anyone comment why Rice Park wasn't considered?
The only one I know about is Rice Park, and it's been a long-standing policy of the city to avoid towers in our parks. And we've got a lot of parks around the city. Rice Park would create some of the similar situations that we're talking about today. But I mean, it's certainly something the council could look at, but we've avoided that just based on the fact that we've got parks all over the community and really have kind of held to that. Then you get into the whole issue of what companies do we allow, what ones we don't, and you get into that whole issue. In this situation and many others, it's a private business decision by a company or an owner of land to deal with these folks. In our case, we would open that up for anybody. And so I think that's probably historically, and I'm saying this goes way back, as to our reluctance to get into that business.
So it would give the perception of favoritism if we allowed certain companies.
Well, I mean, it just opens that door
Yeah.
up, and you do one, you do them all, and
Okay.
it just creates some issues there. And I don't know that that's uncommon around other communities to avoid that whole discussion in your public parks.
Council, it's also a tax issue. If you take public property and it's not used exclusively by the municipality, it becomes taxable.
Okay, so then you'd be,
I see.
Yeah,
That does make sense.
did not know that.
It would have been nice if somebody had returned one of his 15 phone calls and stated that, yeah.
Agreed.
So he would,
Agreed.
So there,
And
there's
we
a
need to do a
problem
better
there.
job of doing
Yeah,
that.
there's a problem there.
What phone calls to who, or who made the phone calls?
This gentleman
Yeah.
here. And, I mean, he's, as you've stated, he's done a great job of researching, of presenting all this. And when he's trying to do his best and the city he's dealing with isn't responding to him, that concerns me as a new resident.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the 15 calls, but
Yeah, like I
it's
said,
unfortunate.
even if it was just a fraction of that, he
Right.
still didn't get a response. So it bothers me that this is also setting a precedence in our neighborhood. Because if that size of a property, I mean, who's to say the Websters won't decide they want to do their own? And they've got a large parcel. Why couldn't they do the same thing?
Well, I
Or
think
if
it's
they sold
allowed
the
by
property.
conditional permit
But-
in industrial, but not in residential. It wouldn't be allowed, right?
The
50 feet.
The
Okay.
height
Thank
limitation,
you.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and what's to say it's just somebody's opinion. is what it is, instead of saying this is a residential area. No. But as you've seen, that there is, the people who live there don't want it. There are options, and they're not being exercised. And it's a business running a business in our neighborhood, and we just are saying no. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council on this issue? Any comments or questions from the council?
Well, this is not an easy issue. I would first, at the outset, say that I think NextTech and Mr. Gato has done a very thorough job, and as a councilman, I would hope that we could find a solution that would allow you to install one of a series of cell towers in Hutchinson. It sounds like you have a solid company and are wanting to improve service, particularly in that part of the city. I think the Planning Commission has done a good, thorough job, as has the staff, in using the guidelines that are presented to evaluate the special use permit. So I think that has been accomplished. But I also certainly respect the neighbors. And the issue that I guess I'm struggling with is the health issue. And the comments about the neighbors' claim detrimental health impacts. I don't know if there is a way to find an independent entity that could substantiate a clarification of this health issue. That may be too far reaching. I support the project. The location seems to have met the required standards, but I am troubled by the concerns that you all have on the health issue and whether or not we can locate an independent entity. I would welcome and encourage that research.
Is the FCC an independent entity? I guess that's
Well,
matter of controversy.
I'm sure they have used a lot of research
Yeah.
in making their determination. And truthfully, if you're that worried, if you have a cell phone, get rid of it if you're that worried about it. Statistics can say anything, depending on how you look at it and which view you're looking for. So I tend to be somewhat, I don't want to say biased about the claims of the internet. You can find anything out there. So I think you have to look very carefully at your sources and who actually is doing the research. So.
I would like to make one more comment about the residents. Just again, thanking you all for coming today, and we appreciate your concerns and definitely appreciate the investment you've made in your homes. Ms. Porter spoke extensively on that, but it's not the purview of the council to resolve conflicts amongst neighbors. And I think one of the bigger underlying issues in this case is the relationship between Knights of Columbus and the neighbors. So I do encourage you again to have a conversation with that organization to see if some of these items can be resolved. Is there any further discussion? And if not, I would entertain a motion to either accept and approve, amend, approve, or override, or deny. Whatever you want to move.
Okay.
Councilman Davine, are you interested in, more information before this is taken? Certainly is there an independent individual out there? Probably, but there's probably on both sides of the issue. But we're willing to do what we can to help you on that
I would
issue.
hope you could, and we could collectively to identify and to research that and report back to all of us, and particularly the impacted neighbors, such clarification. I would encourage us that it does not go unnoticed.
Okay.
And with that, I would move to accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission to approve the request for a conditional use permit for a wireless communication tower at 1200 West 15th Avenue with the conditions as presented.
And I will second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Lang?
Yes.
Next item, please.
Item 9B, consider interim operating agreement with Hutchinson Recreation Commission.
Mayor and Council, the agreement before you today is really a result of some discussions that we've had with Hutchinson Recreation Commission going back to last spring concerning operations at Fun Valley and how we might enter into some collaborative effort in the management of those facilities, Fun Valley and Hobart Detter Field. Recent staffing changes that you're aware of at Fun Valley really forced us to move a lot quicker into this discussion and look at an operational agreement for the balance of 2014. Our original intent was to enter into some discussions, enter into an agreement, bring that agreement to the council that would go into effect at the beginning of 2015 for operations in that year. Again, we were forced to kind of move that discussion on a little bit quicker. The operating agreement will look very similar to the operating agreement and partnership that we have with HRC in the operation of our Salt City Splash, the pool. Essentially, the city owns the facilities, we maintain the facilities, we're responsible for the capital improvements, and HRC is responsible for the programming and operations of that facility. And so under the agreement we're looking at here with Fun Valley Hobart Detter, essentially the same thing. The city would be responsible. Again, we own the facilities. We'll be responsible for the maintenance of those facilities, the capital improvements of those facilities. And while HRC would then enter into operations handling the events, tournaments, leagues, those kinds of activities, more of the programming side of the operation. The interim operating agreement that we're looking at today would again cover the balance of operations for 2014. And essentially, HRC, through really a handshake, have been providing these oversight operations for us since about mid to early part of June, I believe, is when that all happened. So, and our plan will be after today would be then to bring back to the council at the end of this year, towards the end of this year, an agreement that will deal with 2015 operations because it'll look a little bit different. And essentially, under the agreement that you're looking at today, we'll continue to provide all the maintenance, all the care for the facilities, just as we have in the past. HRC, under the agreement, will manage the games, the tournaments, including concession operations. And the difference between this agreement and next year's is currently we had city employees employed as gatekeepers, scorekeepers, those kinds of things. They'll remain city employees throughout the rest of this year under the direction of HRC. Then as we roll into the 2015 agreement, those individuals would actually be employees of HRC. So concession workers, scorekeepers, umpires, all that would be under the control and oversight of HRC. So again, just to kind of summarize, the city will continue to have, our staff, our field maintenance crew will provide all of those types of services this year and into the agreements as we go next year. So, ultimately, we think this arrangement will save money for the community, but I think more importantly, I think it's an opportunity for us to improve our operations at Fun Valley and Hobart Detter. I think HRC brings to the table vast experience and talent in working with athletic leagues and events. We have the talent to deal with the field maintenance side of things. I think there's never been any question about the quality and the condition of our actual playing surfaces. So, and I just want to, again, this arrangement, again, is similar to our arrangement as we operate the Salt City Splash, and that's been a very successful operation for several years. And as I conclude my comments, we'll open up for questions. But I do want to thank Tony Finley and his staff at the HRC for their interest in working with us and on this arrangement and really stepping up during this interim period that we were running through some difficult times, and really appreciate their efforts there. So with that, I would recommend approval of the interim agreement as proposed, and we would stand for any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions or discussion? I have might just say that we really appreciate our partnership with HRC, what you bring to the community and the leadership of the commissioners and the staff in helping us through this time as well, like John mentioned. With that, I would entertain a motion on the interim operating agreement.
I will move to approve the interim agreement as presented.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes?
Dave Lang?
Yes.
I would just comment too, I think we had our first wood bat, the tournament this past weekend, and Tony actually, I'll send those out, shared with me some of the surveys that the coaches, I think, filled out, and really was pleased with what I saw, both on their thoughts on the conditions of the facilities, but also about how we manage, HRC manage the tournament from just organization, concessions, those kind of things. So very good comments.
Great. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 9C, consider Community Gardens Program.
Good morning, Jana McCarran, Director of Planning and Development. And a little bit different tact here from what you normally see from planning. This is not a case, this is actually a program that the Community Improvement Commission has been working on for a little over a year now. As you probably are aware, there are some community gardens already in the city, but this is kind of a way for us to promote, hopefully, even more of them. I have a few slides here, but not very many. Some of you may not know what a community garden is, and basically it's any piece of land that's gardened by a group of people. We have specifically stated that they're not related people because we're trying to build community for the gardens that we're looking at. But in a community garden, you can have flowers, fruit, vegetables, and they also, as I mentioned, grow community. And some of these photos here that I have in my presentation are taken from the community garden that's down by East Side Cemetery, although that garden would not be covered by this program. Community gardens are beneficial to the community because they promote healthy living. You have access to fresh fruit and vegetables, fresh air and exercise, and also they can create attractive neighborhoods. Typically gardens are placed on vacant lots, or lots that are underutilized. Sometimes they're placed next to existing buildings where there's just a vacant area. An example of that would be the library on Main Street. They're putting a community garden next to them. And then also it allows a focus on nature. And there are different types of community gardens. I won't go through each of these very extensively, but allotment gardens are like the one that we have down at East Side Cemetery. And an allotment garden, people contract for a specific lot per se. It's not really a real lot like we think of in planning, but it's a piece of ground that they specifically garden themselves. And they have multiple of these. So I don't remember exactly how many gardeners they have, around 60, I think is what they have. So that's one way to do it. Other models would be a cooperative garden where everybody just comes in and weeds wherever and plants wherever, and they kind of share the produce. There's gardens that are directed towards youth. There's therapeutic gardens. And then finally, entrepreneurial gardens, which would be ones that would not be covered by this program because those are ones that would be for profit. And we're trying to promote more the nonprofit model. Although I don't think the city would necessarily discourage the entrepreneurial ones. In order to encourage community gardens, the CIC had a committee that met, and I just wanted to recognize the chair of the CIC Commission, Betty Taylor. She's here today. We met, I don't even know how many times, probably 15 times to try and develop this program and a handbook that could be used by the public to set up gardens. And one of the things we discussed was the possibility of having incentives to encourage community gardening. And the incentives that we came up with, we kind of looked at some other communities, are threefold. One is a one-time water tap fee waiver that would range from about $245 to $330 in value. $335, depending on the size of the tap. So if it's a bigger water tap, the fee would be more. Also, monthly sewer and stormwater fee waiver, and depending upon the property, that's about a $100 a year benefit. And the reasoning for the sewer and stormwater fee waiver is that these gardens wouldn't be really generating very much sewer well, none. And stormwater, limited runoff from a garden. It's all pervious. It's not impervious, it's pervious. And the third benefit that the CIC recommends to you all is offering up some city-owned property or possibly some land bank property for the use of community gardens. And so the handbook has application materials, has examples of site plans. What a person if a group was wanting to start a garden, they would need to apply, submit the application, submit a site plan, read through the gardening rules, and we spent a lot of time on the rules to try and make sure that they were fair and protected the city's interests, protected the neighbors, but also, didn't prevent the garden. We didn't want to do that. They would need to sign an affidavit if it's owned by somebody other than the person who's applying for the garden, just allowing consent and agreeing that they actually property owner would ultimately be responsible. A license agreement if it's with the city, if it's a city-owned garden, or if it's on land bank property. And finally, we plan to come back to you annually with a report to just provide you with how is the program going, how much produce have we produced, and should we look at the waiver thing again? Is this really costing us too much? Or maybe we should increase the incentives if we don't have enough gardens. And that really concludes my presentation. I'll stand for any questions you might have.
One question, Jana. These are usually, is there a time limit on how late people can work in the garden? I mean, these aren't lit, right?
Right, they're not lit, and I think that's in the gardening rules. Let me just pull that out real fast.
I was looking real quick, and I
think it was 7 p.m. and then in the summer
it's going to be till like dark, but as long as there
Right.
isn't lighting.
Right, we
People
would
aren't-
require that they submit, so if a group came to us and wanted to apply for a garden, we would require them to submit us their regulations. And we have a sample set of regulations in what the materials we're providing for them, and what we're recommending is from May to September, 8 p.m. would be the latest hour.
Right,
Also, no pets, no artificial lighting.
Yeah.
Pesticides would have to be approved. So we have they've spent a lot of time. We have a master gardener on our commission, so that really helps too.
Thanks, Betty.
Okay, good, yeah.
Yeah.
So if there's no other questions.
Janet, does this have any fiscal impact on our budget?
We estimate no more than $2,000 a year. We wouldn't actually be paying out any money, but and the fee waivers would be worth that. There could be some positive impacts, though, because right now the Parks Department has to mow and maintain some of these properties that might become gardens, so that would be a savings. We really don't think the fiscal impacts are going to be very, very big.
Well, what a neat program.
Yeah, great.
Is there any more discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion about the Community Gardens program.
Your turn, John.
No, it's your turn.
That was yours. I will move to accept the community gardens project and approve the program and handbook.
No, I would second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Light?
Yes.
Next item, please.
Item 9D, consider limited fire protection services agreement with City of South Hutchinson.
Mayor and Council, I'll start off giving some background on this, and Fire Chief Forbes is here if you've got any follow-up questions on specific details of how this might look. Some of you may be aware, but for several years internally, we've talked about fire services that the City of Hutchinson provides to the City of South Hutchinson at no cost, and really the equity of that issue. And most of this was done under the guise of the mutual aid agreement that we have with a lot of other fire districts, other communities in the area. And typically when you think of mutual aid, you think of, okay, we're going to be there when there's a major event, a tornado, a grass fire, but not your just everyday typical fire runs. In 2010, the City of Hutchinson Fire Department responded to a commercial fire event in South Hutchinson as we were requested and dispatched to do so. this particular fire event ended the career of one of our firefighters who was hurt very badly during that incident, and resulted in a substantial amount of medical claims and work comp claims for the city. And I think it was that event in 2010 that really pushed us to begin opening some more serious formal discussions with the city of South Hutchinson about their expectations of Hutchinson Fire Department and the whole equity issue. In August of 2013, then Mayor Bob Bush, Fire Chief Forbes, and myself sat down with representatives of the city of South Hutchinson in an effort to try to move these discussions towards a formal fire service contract, cost for services, and really just try to clarify what the expectations were of Hutch Fire. The agreement before you today is the result of those discussions. In my opinion, the agreement doesn't fully address the equity issue at all, but it is a step, I think, in the right direction. In the agreement, as you see, the city of South Hutchinson, or the city of Hutchinson, agrees that we would respond to any residential commercial structure fire with the one aerial ladder truck, which is 3 men, and 1 chief officer for, again, we're not going to be responding to other types of emergencies, accidents, those types of things. So the agreement then sets forth additional details as to what happens on scene, who's in charge at the scene when certain people arrive. Typically, I would think City of Hutch Fire, if called, would be the more than likely be first on the scene. So. And when we looked at, in terms of compensation and how we would come at that, we looked at several options. We looked, first of all, to continue to do nothing, just do what we're doing, continue to provide those services at a heck of a deal for residents in South Hutch. Or do we look at a per run charge? Do we just charge every time we go? Flat fee, utilization of the Fire District Number 2 formula that we have already in place. And what we ended up with is what you see before you is a proposed flat fee that was equal to $1 million for the city of South Hutchinson, which is roughly $23,000. And this would go into effect 2015. And as I stated earlier, this agreement does not address totally the equity issue, as our services are worth a lot more than what this $25,000 represents. And that being said, I think it is a step forward in addressing the fairness issue. And again, Chief Forbes is here today to answer any specific questions you have as to our approach to this. And we would stand for any questions that you might have as well. So with that, I'll open it up back to the council.
I think, John, I know there's been, yes, sir, would you?
Well, at an appropriate time, I'd like to address it.
Right. I know this has been a long-standing, unresolved issue, but in your judgment, in your discussions with the folks in South Hutchinson, our good neighbors, this is really the best that you believe at this time is doable?
Financially, I think, obviously it's a hit to them, and I think the issue is for them long-term is, are they going to build a fire department that then doesn't rely on the city of Hutch only for major events? And I think that's to be determined. I think they're in the process of talking about it. I think they've already hired some full-time firefighters that work, a certain part of the day. And so if there's a major event, we'll be there. I mean, that's the difficult part of this is at what point do you say, we're not going to respond? And so
going a different direction, I hate to say this word, but I'm going to say it. Is there any potential of any merger or consolidation of the 2 fire departments?
That was one of the discussions early on
Okay.
that I think made a lot of sense. We've got a 24/7, 365-day-a-year fire department. We've got a fire station within minutes of South Hutchinson. And again, you look at the total picture, this would be a prime example for that kind of project, that kind of discussion. Just weren't able to get to that.
We're not able to get to that.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
John, can you remind me how this is handled in other cities in Reno County? Are they within our response area?
We typically, again, we have mutual aid with all the other small cities in the county. And again, if, typically you're talking about maybe grass fires. If there's for example, if, Beeler has a major fire in the downtown area that's a large structure fire, we would respond. And we have responded to situations in Beeler as well over the years. And Kim probably can address more specifically that. So, still doesn't take away the mutual aid side of things, because that's something that we'll continue to do and have that. But I think mutual aid's, in my mind, is kind of mutual aid. It works both ways. And in this particular case, I think the residents of South Hutch benefit from a first-class, fully equipped fire department, yet not having to pay for it.
There's a comment in the background about requiring Hutchinson to join, or South Hutch to join Fire District 2. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I'm not sure. They just don't want to belong to that?
Kim, you might. They're not a part of that
They're not
district.
part
That
of
was
it.
a formula that we have in place now.
Right.
When we took over
Right.
the merger of Fire District 2. And
Can you remind me what others in that response area pay? In a mill equivalency, is that
well, in Fire
20
District
mills
2, just to give you an idea, their annual payment to the city for fire services is about $1.5 million.
Kim Forbes, Fire Chief. On an annual basis, Fire District 2 contributes $1,500,000. That's been in that neighborhood for the last 2 or 3 years. That's based on the assessed valuation of the city of Hutchinson, Fire District 2. Those values are combined together and then divided out to create a percentage. And then the bottom line number of the city's budget for the fire department itself, a percentage is taken against that. That represents the amount of money that Fire District 2 contributes then.
Just to give you a quick idea, using that formula, that same formula that is in Fire District 2, with the valuation numbers of 21 million in South Hutch, be about $498,000.
Okay.
Okay, that's what I was wanting.
Yeah.
So, and they'll be paying about 5% of that?
Whatever 25,000 that is,
Yeah.
And that was the stumbling block, going from not paying anything to paying $497,000 to represent the same as what Fire District 2 would be paying, and do that in a small amount of time. For any community, the tax amount that they had all of a sudden encumber is staggering for them. So that's the reason in my recommendation that I said that this opens the door. At least we're receiving something that we haven't been in the past, but maybe over a 5, 6, 7 year time period, if you're working with the city of South Hutchinson, then hopefully that's the direction that we would go. But they could steadily increase that percentage then and arrive at that. There's another side to it that maybe you limit it to a certain number for the overall city, but maybe the larger industrial plants that's over there, you could talk to them on an individual basis to contract for fire protection, and then that would represent a larger amount of money then that would come toward fire protection. And so there's a number of things that could be looked at, but obviously if you just walk in and say you're going from 0 to 490,000, nobody's going to want to do that just right away.
Yeah, and if that happened, that would get to the question of merger. There would no longer be a another division. There would be just all merged.
Well, I would posit that $498,000 is probably a lot less than it would cost to build up a department from scratch. And it's up to the residents of South Hutch to ask their city staff to justify those overwhelming costs. But because I cannot imagine a city that size, 2,500 people, building a full-service fire department when there's one right across.
Right. Well, it makes a lot of sense in the long run to do the merger issue. There just needs to be a formula that comes about so that it would be affordable for people.
So if we start at this level, what's the expectation next year?
Well, what I'd like to see is the direction from the council and city manager then to sit down with South Hutchinson to continue that dialogue and discussion so that we reach that, whether it's a combination of local businesses in the city of South Hutchinson and the city of South Hutchinson, arrives at that formula that you have a fire or an emergency of any type that we would respond to, but then it's equal representation for all the people that we're responding to. And To me, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I'm sure you presented these facts, but it would be interesting to know if there were a merger or an expanded similar to District 2, what the difference would be in the fire district or the fire rating classifications to those industries down there as well as the residents.
Well, if the city of Hutchinson provided their fire protection, right now the city has a Class 3 rating, and we're close enough to the city of South Hutchinson. My guess, I'm not an insurance company, but my guess would be that their fire protection would go down. It's somewhere between a 5 to 7, I believe now.
5 to
So
7,
it would
yeah.
go
Parts of
to.
their cities is 7, and part where there's a bigger water line is 5. But
I would think that'd be far more
Okay.
attractive
Yeah.
to
Be
industry
huge, yeah.
locating
Yeah.
there. Yeah, so it'd be in their economic development interest
Interest.
Yeah,
to
I
go
would
that,
agree.
that route. So what you're saying, Kim, is it's either we agree to this or they pay nothing.
That's correct.
So either we
They're-
get a
they're-
little or we get nothing.
They're paying
Yeah.
nothing right now, so at least you've got the door open, they're paying something. It's a limited type fire protection. We're saying that if they have a structure fire, we'll send an aerial unit with the chief officer for the 1 mil consideration. If they have a larger incident, the mutual aid consent or so would kick in. But that's a drastic type of fire, so it's not the day-to-day emergencies. So right now, if they would ask for a mutual aid for whatever, we would respond with whatever piece of equipment and manpower and stuff that's necessary. So we're stepping back away from that to some degree and saying the mutual aid would be a larger scale incident. Then on a day-to-day basis, if they have a structure fire, we will send the 1 unit with the chief officer. There'll be an administrative guideline as how do we operate on the scene when we arrive. Part of the problem is that Monday through Friday during daylight hours, now they do have 2 to 3 people that's available to respond to calls that they're paying for, but after 5 o'clock, up to early morning hours, and then on the weekends, they're back to volunteer departments. So there's going to be times when our unit probably will arrive on scene first. So since I'm not sending backup units to protect my people, part of the agreement will be that we'll operate from the outside of the structure until South Hutch arrives with significant manpower. So if we committed someone to inside a building, we have someone that could help rescue our people. That's important to me. And I think that's important also to the city of South Hutch. They recognize what that safety value would be. So those type of administrative guidelines will be set up so we operate, from a safe approach. If there's a large fire at a structure, hopefully South Hutch has the manpower now and stuff that they'll be able to bring additional units there to knock down the fire. That's been the problem in the past, is that they've had limited manpower, so at times. So that was the reason why that we may send an equivalent to a first alarm assignment there, is simply because the manpower. But they have been working on that, and their goal is to continue to work on that. And I think the question that they have is, do they go ahead and commit to the consolidation type fire service, or do they go ahead and build a fire department themselves so they're self-sustained? So that's some of the things we'll have to cross too.
I think at the end of the day, we're always going to do what's right and save lives, but it is important that these conversations get started. Is there any further discussion from the council, or is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the council on this issue?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name's Ron Sellers. I live at 3400 Farmington Drive. The council has asked some of the questions this morning that I had when I saw this in the paper, that it was an agenda item. I think, to me, it's a big change going from a mutual aid agreement to Chief Forbes sending a truck and a superintendent for every fire that goes, for every fire call in South Hutch. And I think that's understood by the council, the change that is taking place by this agreement. For many, many years, as John Deerdoff has indicated, it's been felt that Hutchinson runs a very professional fire department with professional leadership, and our outlying areas are very poorly served by either volunteer people or very poor trained people. Years past, we've heard of situations where there's been fires where volunteer people won't actually enter the facilities. Professional fire people are important for our total community, and I think we're going in the right way. I'm very, very disturbed, though, that the negotiated agreement is for $22,000. The facts have come out this morning what the fair value for this assistance is of somewhere around $500,000. Chief Forbes, correct me if I'm way off base here, but I think his department spends $7.5 to $8 million a year to protect us. Now, some of this is expensed on emergency calls, but the chief purpose of the fire department is for fire protection. In 2013, I think he had about 4,000 total calls, but we only had 100 residential calls and 16 commercial calls in the city of Hutchinson. And they're expecting 11 calls in South Hutchinson, which is 9% of our, quote, fire calls. I totally agree that this is the right direction to be moving, but and maybe you should go ahead and approve it, but in my opinion, the city of Hutchinson is providing a service here that far exceeds the payment that we're receiving. And I just don't see why the city taxpayers should be expected to pay for this service that is $500,000 of value for many years. If it's the first year, I understand, but we're really giving them something much better than they had for nothing, because for nothing, you only went when they called. Now we're going when there's a fire call. And so to me, if you approve this agreement, in my opinion, you need to approve it with the caveat that the city of South Hutchinson has got to make a decision here very, very soon whether they want professional fire protection or if they want to go it on their own. As John indicated, and I think your question on fire insurance, there's several companies in South Hutchinson that will receive much more of a credit than they're paying us, the city, for this protection just due to this agreement. If this is the best agreement that could be negotiated, so be it, but it's not fair to the citizens of Hutchinson to be providing $500,000 worth of services for $25,000. So if it's your intention to do this year, I would hope you would make a very, very strong voice that the city of South Hutchinson's got to decide next year whether they want to be on an equal basis like Fire District Number 2, which helps the city $1.5 million. That's money. $22,000 is not one call for a fire department response. And as John indicated, we had one person hurt in South Hutchinson that far exceeds $22,000. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank
I
you,
think your
Ron.
comments are spot on. And if we agree to this today, can we offer it with the condition that something needs to be done, a decision needs to be made? I mean, I hate to do that because if something's happening in South Hutch, we're not going to not respond.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing now.
We're not going to let somebody's house burn down because of principle that, our taxpayers are paying for the service, but it's not fair and something needs to be resolved.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is a first step. I don't think it's probably where we want to end up by any stretch of the imagination. So I would hope that over the next year, the parties involved really do work to try to get them to a more equitable compensation for this service.
Has any conversation been had with the industry there? Or was that just an idea?
I have not. There's been some, I believe Mayor Bush had a conversation Mayor Bush, with one of the industries, but not on any formal basis. And you know, that would certainly be a conversation to have in terms of, are they aware of, you know, what their fire protection is. I think there's an assumption that we're available, and you've got some significant industry there with potential issues there that without a doubt we would be a part of that. So and the council certainly welcome to, you know, send us back to the table, because this again isn't going into effect until 2/15, but based on your conversation, we're willing to do that.
Well, as a starting point, beyond if we were to approve this for 2015, would it be appropriate to craft a very, very clear letter to the mayor and the city council of South Hutchinson, perhaps signed by the mayor as well as the balance of the council, conveying what our long-term desires would be, and articulate what you have, I know, verbally discussed, but just simply to put it on record.
I think that's excellent.
And you know, there's negotiations in all of this. We want to maintain that good relationship. We don't want to antagonize anything, but I think a clear communication might be another starting point.
And John, we by no means want to minimize the work that you've done on this compromise,
No,
because I know it's
no,
years in the
absolutely
making,
not.
and it sounds like we're doing that, but we appreciate the forward movement.
Yeah, I'm not particularly proud of
the
amount, because it doesn't have any, it doesn't reflect at all the value, but it's a start. So
It's a baby step.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the council on this? Trent?
From a citizen standpoint.
Okay.
Make that very clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hide your logo.
Trent Maxwell, 3503 Dogwood Drive. I was just thinking, you know, we go through budget discussions and study sessions, and how much difference $500,000 makes to our budget. And if you ask the citizens to vote on whether or not we want to supply that service for free, I think that'd be a little challenging, where we cut things all the time to fulfill a free service somewhere else. So I think in them creating a mill increase to provide or pay for the service that our department does is kind of the same of what we've been doing forever. So our mill increase has already been done, and we're paying that, and we've been paying it every year. And so we're concerned with them doing a one-year increase. Well, maybe we'll have a deduction. Maybe we won't need to increase our mill because they're finally picking up the tab. So I'd be less concerned with what a one increase would do in 1 year when, you know, we're picking that tab up this year. Whether, I mean, he's got stuff he has to pay for. We got a budget for that as part of his operating expense. It's not free money that we're going to get that goes to a magical pot. It's going to his expenses. So I just wanted a voice from someone paying taxes, my concern. So thanks.
Thank you, Trent. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion on this item.
I would move to approve the limited fire protection service agreement with the city of South Hutchinson and authorize the vice mayor to sign.
And I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Light?
Yes.
Next item, please.
Item 9E, consider rehabilitation of Airport Road Bridge.
Good morning again, Michael Kramer with the engineering department. I have an agreement here for the engineering services on the Airport Road Bridge. A little bit of background: the bridge, the city took it over and through annexation. The bridge is a 4-lane structure. It's actually 2 bridges, and it's in severe, dire straits as far as needing repairs. This is just the first step. The engineering consultant will look at the bridge, evaluate the bridge, and provide detailed plans and specifications for that rehabilitation. And the estimated fee on the project for the consultant is $102,000 approximately. And then the construction will be in next year's budget. And that right now is estimated to be construction of about $900,000 with, I believe, around $100,000 for inspection services, about that.
Is that in the CIP or?
Yeah.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and after looking at the pictures that came along with this, you can't start fixing that thing soon enough.
No.
Is there any more discussion? Anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I will move to approve the agreement for professional engineering services for the repair of the airport bridge.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Next item, please.
Item 9F, consider report of bid opening for Kissawah North improvements.
Yes, for the Kissawah North subdivision, the improvements were bid last week. We had 3 contractors bid. And of course, this includes the street, the water, and the sanitary sewer. The total bid estimate by the engineer, again, the consultant, was $639,000 approximately. We had bids of $667,000, $671,000, and $672,000. The petitions have been appropriately amended this morning, and we recommend awarding the construction contract to Mies Construction in the amount of $667,508.22.
Any questions or discussion from the council? I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to approve awarding the project to Mies Construction, subject to compliance with all legal requirements.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Next item, please.
Item 9G, consider report of bid opening for Quail Ridge improvements.
Yeah, similarly, the Quail Ridge improvements were bid last week, and the engineer's estimate on the project, total estimate was $1,037,856. Again, we had 3 bidders. Again, all very competitive bids. And the lowest 2 were Noack Construction and Donlinger. They were only separated by around $1,600, and we recommend going with the low bid from Noack Construction of $802,329.66. Oh, I'm sorry, 96 cents.
Any questions or discussion from the council?
Okay, I will move to approve awarding the project to Noack Construction as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Next item, please.
Item 10, report of city officials.
Nancy?
Nothing.
John?
No, nothing this morning.
I have nothing as well. John?
A couple things. First of all, I just want to share some good news. We just got a letter this morning congratulating us for the Kansas Department of Transportation grant application was approved for our 3rd to 5th Street main project.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Yes,
So-
yes.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
So just a little over $1 million project, and 70% of that will be from KDOT funds. So it's a great opportunity to extend some of the great work that's went on in our downtown, going on now, from streetscapes of the past to redevelopment and buildings by the private sector, and of course the Wiley project. So a bit of good news today. So.
Great.
Reminder of our budget study session on July 22nd, 8 a.m. We'll do it here, and we'll just continue on our discussions, and we'll have some information to share with you and respond to some of the questions you had at the last meeting. And in front of you is a notebook. It's the Stormwater Advisory Committee notebooks, and that's really just for your information if you want to read that late at night, I'm sure.
Exciting reading.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a result of 3 meetings that we've had to date and 3 more to go, but that give you some of the idea of where the committee's at, and they're really doing very good work to this point. And I would just ask, I read the story, were you at the Amtrak? Yeah, you.
Yes,
Yeah,
I was.
Cindy, yeah, okay. And I know Cindy was there, and I was going to ask you if you wanted to share what kind of happened there. I mean, I know they got off the train. I read the story, and
Well, they just
briefly,
made a very short stop,
Yeah.
and the CEO encouraged not only the council but residents at large to contact their congressman about the Tiger Grant,
Yeah.
and feel very strongly about keeping the route should
Right.
it be awarded.
Well,
A
good.
very short stop.
Yeah, I appreciate you being there, and I know some Dodge City people got on here, and then we're going to ride back out to Dodge. So,
Yeah.
did you get on the train at all, or just a?
You know, we didn't have a chance to get on the train,
Yeah.
but I was taken aback by the CEO's appearance and his name, Boardman.
Yeah.
And he
looked like
a train conductor.
that
with
picture.
the-
Did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed
He's
that.
in the right
Stereotype,
industry.
Stereotype.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you representing us. I appreciate that. So, that's all I have, Madam
I
Vice
would
Mayor.
entertain a motion to recess into executive session for the purpose of discussing employer-employee negotiations until, what do you think?
How long?
Noon? Noon, at which time no binding action shall be taken.
I so move.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Dave Lang?
Yes.